Hi people, it's Starcraft here, coming at you with yet another top 10, but today in a slightly different style. So normally I do these videos from a script. I have written it all down and I just read it out. It's all pre-planned and I try to keep it quite focused. But today it's going to be a bit longer because I'm not using a script. I have a few notes written down, but I'm generally just saying what comes to mind. And so in today's list I'm going to be talking about my top 10 ideas for genre mashups. And what I mean by this is taking something that's, say, a first-person shooter and making it into an RTS, because I think it's just something that might be a good idea for the moment at least. So an example of this, although I don't think it's a particularly good idea, is to turn Mario into a first-person shooter. By far what I love most about Evolve are the monster designs. Even the game itself doesn't massively appeal to me, but the reason I still play it is just to enjoy the look of the monsters, how different they are from one another, the sheer creativity, and the fact that you can evolve them over time and invest a little bit of time into the monsters. However, that is the problem with Evolve. You only get a little bit of time to invest time into the monsters. You play through a relatively short match and then you're reset. You have to go again with the next match and evolve your monster. What I think could work quite well is a full-on RPG style for Evolve. So you start off at the very beginning as just an egg, you're just an egg, and you come out and you're a very tiny monster. You're not even what the game would currently qualify as stage 1, you're like a baby. And you have to prey on very small monsters, and over the course of the entire game, you gradually become a stage 3, or why not go up to like stage 10 or stage 20, you keep getting stronger and stronger monster, and that's how you get better at the game. I mean, in most RPGs, you're seeing the game from a humanoid perspective, and this would of course be a more bestial one, and right there, that's a massive break traditionally from the genre. The only thing that may initially come as a bit of a when it comes to an RPG is the interaction you might think would be limited, because these aren't like humans talking to each other about scenarios, but why not have communities of these monsters where you talk to them in their own language? I mean, I can imagine you starting off as a very small monster in a pack of Goliaths, and you have to not only evolve your own character, but improve your relations with the other Goliaths amongst the species. So not just your actual biological evolution, but your status within a tribe of your own monsters. So you begin as just some little Goliath that no one cares about. You're not in any kind of lineage, and then you fight other Goliaths and become all of a sudden the chief of the Goliaths, and you run your own Goliath pack. I think there's enormous opportunity for creativity here. And what I'm essentially getting at is a far greater version of the Spore creature stage. If you ever played Spore, there was a creature stage. Something like that, but on a much grander scale, a far more dedicated scale, using the designs of Evolve. Something I really admire about Diablo 3 is the art design, the atmosphere, the locations, the monster designs. It's all so incredible. And I think that if you just take Sanctuary or the different locations of Diablo 3 and apply it to a traditional survival horror, the effects could be quite amazing. Because when you're playing Diablo 3, although there are some truly unsettling designs of monsters, things that if you were forced to face in a first-person mode would be very scary, because you're so powerful in the game, you just mow them down, just kill them, just destroy them, they're no threat at all. And of course, a survival horror game is never terrifying if you can just mow down your enemies. And so what I am proposing here is a Diablo 3 survival horror. So rather than just mowing the enemies down, you have to hide away. You have to be careful, you have to manage your resources. Sure, loot collection could still be in the game, but nothing that can lead to you becoming overpowered or too strong. So I think really incorporating Blizzard's excellent art design, their incredible atmosphere. I mean, just take Westmarch or New Tristram, for example. These are absolutely perfect locations for a survival horror. One change I think would be absolutely critical though is that the game becomes either a third-person game, traditionally speaking, or a full-on first-person game. The isometric view we have at the moment of Diablo 3 is just far too disconnecting to be tense or scary. I mean, the fact that you can just look down on your character from a distance already creates a sense of disconnect, and that really just makes the enemies seem like less of a threat, even if they are a threat. If you are forced to take the perspective of your hero and see the world through their eyes, all of a sudden those dangerous threats become a lot more intimidating. I mean, I'm just thinking of a game I've played recently like Alien Isolation. Had that been isometric, even if the alien is still as much of a threat, it wouldn't have been nearly as scary. One of, if not my favourite gaming genres is the RTS, and sadly they do seem to be disappearing a bit now. When I was a bit younger they seemed to be all over the place, especially for the PC, but now we see a lot less of them. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that RTSs don't really appeal to younger gamers, and of course younger gamers make up a huge amount of just gamers in general. We haven't really had a franchise adapted to an RTS that originally appealed to kids, because it's very difficult to do that. But I think one franchise that could maybe work is, funnily enough, Pokemon. Because Pokemon does have a sort of pre-built template to become an RTS. You've got the different factions in the form of the different Pokemon types, so you could have the Fire faction, the Water faction, the Grass faction. You can have different unit types based on stages. If anyone's ever played WarCraft 3, you will remember the hero units, and these could level up over time just by killing other units, and you could have it so although you have lots of your standard Pokemon, you could have one particular hero class Pokemon who levels up as you go along in the game, and that could be like, you know, your main focus. And it makes sense because RTS games always have to have a commander, and so, you know, the Pokemon trainer simply is taking control of way more Pokemon than usual. To me it seems like a surprisingly natural thing to do, because it would be able to introduce younger gamers to a genre that is typically aimed at, you know, adolescents and up. And also we've seen Nintendo do things like this before. I mean, if you look at Hyrule Warriors, that was a very different spin-off from what we traditionally see with Zelda games. So I think this is something that could not only work, but would actually be a very good idea and could potentially be a commercial success, especially as it would bring older gamers like me back into Pokemon. So you'd be, you know, getting a very wide net here. Now, this next suggestion isn't entirely original. In fact, it's not really original at all. A while back there was a game that was announced called Starcraft Ghosts, and this was to be a third-person action game where you took control of a ghost unit and you would have a few stealth elements and you would take on things like Protoss and Zerg, and it would offer an entirely new perspective on the game that had so far only been seen as an RTS. You would occasionally now you get the cutscenes, but we've never really played the game from a true perspective, because anyone who's played StarCraft on the story modes will know that not only are you seeing it from a disconnected RTS perspective, but things like scale are way off, and so what you're getting is a almost interpretive view of what you should be seeing, but it's not a true view of what you're seeing. I mean, the difference between, just for example, the cinematic cutscenes and the in-game is wildly dramatic, not just a little bit. I mean, in the actual game, battle cruisers look quite small, but they're meant to be enormous. Like, in a lot of these maps, they would be taking up the entire battlefield. And I think it would be quite cool to be able to play through an entire game just seeing StarCraft from a true scale, a true perspective. So what I'm saying here is that Starcraft Ghosts, that was originally cancelled, actually be put back into production so we can have Starcraft 2, which has up till now been an RTS, become a third-person action game. When you look at the most successful kart racer out there, Mario Kart, I think one of the reasons the game is so successful is because, well, number one, it's a well-made game, but secondly, because the mascots in the game are so well known. I mean, Mario is arguably the best known gaming character in the world. I mean, everyone knows his backup characters. They know Peach, Luigi, Bowser, Donkey Kong. Everyone knows them, and so the game naturally gets a lot of free marketing just by association. And so I was thinking, what's another franchise with some mascots that hasn't had a kart racer made for it yet? And it just came to me, Minecraft. Why doesn't Minecraft have a dedicated kart racer yet? You've got Steve, who is one of the best known gaming mascots now. You've got things like the Enderman, the zombie, the skeleton, the zombie pigmen. These characters, these enemies which are now in some ways cultural phenomena. You even got things like, I mean, it would just really fit a Minecraft kart style racing game just to make a pig a kart racer. And of course, in the very spirit of Minecraft, you could design your own cars. Of course, there are some mods already out there. You can play mods of Minecraft as a kart racer, but of course it would be so much better if we had like a studio like Microsoft actually come out and make a full, dedicated, made-for-purpose Minecraft kart racer, or if you just want to do the marketing, just call it Minecart. It would just be so successful. I mean, the franchise already appeals to younger gamers a lot, so naturally, kart races which also appeal to them it would come together in this perfect storm and be such a commercial success. Okay, so this next suggestion is quite simple, but it's one I really want to see. So, it seems like the WarCraft universe has been translated into many different genres already. We have card games in Hearthstone, we have of course MMOs, World of Warcraft, and RTS, Warcraft 3, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 1. But what I really want to see is a game that takes on the traits of a third-person action game like God of War. Now, whenever you play through raids in World of Warcraft, yes, these bosses are quite epic to take down, it can be very satisfying to kill them, but I would love to see a blend of style between the God of War boss fights and the World of Warcraft ones. So yes, as fun as it may be to take down Ragnaros, imagine how much funner it could potentially be to do it in the style of a God of War game. So rather than just standing there, pressing 1, pressing 2, pressing 1 again, maybe healing, just having to really jump at Ragnaros, jumping between platforms, avoiding those massive rocks but in a far more dynamic style, really getting down, doing finishing attacks, jumping across his body, really taking those traits of the God of War games and applying it to the World of Warcraft raid bosses. That is something I would love to see, especially if the game would allow you to play as one of the major heroes. I mean, I can't imagine something much funner, to be honest, than playing as Thrall taking on Kil'jaeden in a God of War style game. That would just be my dream come true in terms of an experience in a game like this. For a long time I was convinced that RTS games simply could not work on a console. Nowhere near as good as a PC, it just wasn't even worth doing. And there were admittedly a lot of terrible ports of PC RTSs to consoles. But then came along Halo Wars, and this was an RTS that was meant to be played on a console, and it worked extremely well. Not just well for a console RTS, it was just very well done. And even if you play it today, it's still enjoyable, it's a lot of good fun. The fact that you don't have a mouse and keyboard doesn't feel like a limitation, it's just a different way of playing an RTS. And so what I'd like to see is another well-known, traditionally first-person shooter franchise made into an RTS, and that would be, for me, Call of Duty. First of all, the newest entry in this series, at the moment at least, Advanced Warfare, showed us lots of different kinds of futuristic mechanical units that would be excellent in an RTS game. And secondly, well, this is more of an anecdote, but when I heard about Black Ops 3 that has recently been announced, I just didn't really care. In fact, I saw the advertisement on YouTube, but I didn't click on it, and I normally would always do that. I always click on a new game being announced just to see it, but I just did not care. I eventually looked at it and I just didn't care what I was seeing. I just do not care. And I think a lot of people have got to this point with Call of Duty. They need something fundamental to change. Not just small improvements anymore. They really need an overhaul. And this will either be to do with the gameplay mechanics, or as I'm suggesting here, a total shift in the genre itself. And I think that making, at least for 1 year, just like an alternating thing, make Call of Duty an RTS, at least as a one-off. When I was playing Mortal Kombat recently, I realised that Sub-Zero and Scorpion have a very wide range of abilities that would really lend themselves well to a Batman Arkham style open world action game. I mean, there are a few things that a character needs to work in these. First of all, an interesting story to play through, both of which have them. You could also switch between them, like, you know, in Batman Arkham City you can switch between Catwoman and Batman. Here you could switch between Sub-Zero and Scorpion. You need the ability to traverse the environment. Sub-Zero could fly around on sheets of ice. Scorpion could use his spear and teleportation. They both are competent at melee fighting, so they could do the counter system just like Arkham. I mean, we saw Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor be a very effective interpretation of the Arkham style of combat, and I think that could work even better with the Mortal Kombat characters here. I think it's fair to say that Sub-Zero and Scorpion are the two most popular characters in the Mortal Kombat series, and so already there's massive marketing appeal there. The only thing I just can't off the top of my head think of is where the open world would be set. But I think the base mechanics are so well put in place by the fighting game that they could translate ever so well into a third-person Arkham-style action open world game. On this list, I knew that I had to have at least one suggestion where a game becomes an MMO, a massively multiplayer online RPG. And I thought about all the games I've played and which one would make for the best MMO. And funnily enough, I ended up on Infamous. Whenever you're making an MMO, you always need a good excuse to have lots of people running around with different powers. When they did this with DC Online, there was a bit of a suspicion there as why are there so many people with superpowers running around? Even in games like World of Warcraft, how come there are so many superpowered people? But in the Infamous universe, there's already been an establishment that conduits are pretty much everywhere. They're very common in the Infamous world, so having lots of people in the game running around with powers completing quests wouldn't seem so far-fetched. Also, just the term conduit has an enormous amount of flexibility to it. So you could have concrete conduits be tanks, you could have neon conduits be DPS, you could have new kinds of conduits such as nature conduits being about healing, and there's no reason to stop there, just keep going and going and going. If Infamous Second Son's video power showed us anything, it's that there is an enormous amount of freedom here. And you could try and incorporate the siphoning energy from the environment feature from Infamous to bring in quite a unique form of resource management for an MMO. When I was playing Cities Skylines recently, I remember thinking to myself, I would love to just kind of run through the city I've made. I like building it, but I also want to run through it and maybe cause a bit of mayhem. And then when I played Grand Theft Auto 5 later, I remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could build my own city? And so here, the mashup I want to make is between a city builder, City Skylines, and the third-person action open world game, GTA 5. So a game where you can take the time to design your own city, make all the little intricate changes, whatever you want, the layout is entirely yours, maybe even like things like traffic in certain areas, that's all for you to do, and then you save the city, it's completed, and then you can enter it in a separate mode where you are someone like a Grand Theft Auto character. You can walk around, just explore it if you want, but you can also cause mayhem. So you would have like an infinite number of cities to terrorize. It would be a very strange mashup, but I think it's one that could work. And even if you want to just disregard the mashup side of it, just bring in an editor mode to Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PC and you get a very similar effect there. So I think it could potentially have enormous lasting appeal, especially if you can invite other players to come into your city and cause mayhem and try and destroy it, wreck it. So these were my top 10 suggestions for genre mashups, but please do feel free to let me know your own. Don't feel any kind of constraint here, really do let your imaginations run wild, come up with any suggestions you can think of, I'd love to hear them. So as always people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.